I spent $275,000 on a lake house for my parents' peaceful retirement. But the day I walked in to surprise them, my brother was in the kitchen, barefoot, drinking coffee with his family, acting like they owned the place. My sister-in-law's first words to me were, "She just transferred the money. This house is our family's." They didn't know every brick was tied to a legal secret only I held. My name is Aubrey Snow. I'm 36 years old. I'm a dentist, and I just drove nearly 2 hours to Silver Willow Lake. The plan was simple: a surprise weekend visit, a quiet Friday slipping into a peaceful Saturday, just me and my parents in the house I'd bought for them. The gravel crunched under my tires in the exact same way it had 3 months ago when I first handed them the keys. I killed the engine, and the silence of the lake rushed in, exactly as it should. "Peace," I smiled, grabbing my overnight bag from the passenger seat. I'd pictured this moment all week during a grueling stretch of root canals and cosmetic veneers. Mom and Dad, sitting on the white wooden porch, drinking coffee, maybe reading. They'd look up, surprised, and Mom would press a hand to her heart, and Dad would give me that slow, proud smile that always made the grinding work feel worth it. I used my own key. The brass felt cool against my palm. The deadbolt slid back with a heavy, satisfying clack. I pushed the door open, calling out, "Mom, Dad, surprise!" The smell hit me first, not the scent of lake water and pine I'd come to associate with this place, but something else: stale coffee, lukewarm milk, and the unmistakable powdery sour tang of a full diaper pail. Then the sound, a television blaring, not the quiet news program my father watched, but a high-pitched, manic cartoon jingle, and laughter, not my mother's gentle chuckle, but the shrieking laughter of small children. I stepped into the foyer and stopped dead. My weekend bag slipped from my fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud. The living room, the one I had meticulously furnished with comfortable, clean-lined furniture in shades of beige and lake blue, was destroyed. It was a primary-colored explosion. Plastic blocks were scattered across the new area rug. A neon green playmat was shoved against the fireplace. A half-eaten bag of chips was overturned on the cushions of the sofa. And sitting in the center of it all, on the sofa I had spent 3 weekends selecting, was my brother, Ethan. He was slouched deep into the cushions, one bare foot propped up on the solid oak coffee table I had explicitly told my mother to protect with coasters. His eyes were glued to the cartoon, and the remote control was balanced on his chest. He turned his head slowly, his expression not one of surprise or welcome, but of mild annoyance at the interruption. "Oh," he said, his voice flat. "You made it to my house." A cold prickle, sharp as a dental probe, ran straight down my spine. My house. Before I could form a word, a figure emerged from the kitchen. It was Ethan's wife, Brianna. She was wearing a voluminous, faded pink nightgown that I recognized as one of my mother's. She held a coffee mug, my mother's favorite mug, the one with the hand-painted heron, and paused in the doorway. She took a long, slow sip, leaving a greasy, bright red lipstick stain on the rim. She looked at me, then around the chaotic room, and a small, tight smile played on her lips. "This lake house suits us, don't you think?" she said, her voice laced with a sweetness that felt like acid. "It just needs kids to really feel like a family home." My heart, which had been rattling against my ribs, suddenly felt like it had been dropped in ice water. I looked past her, into the kitchen, searching. Where are Mom and Dad? They appeared as if summoned by the tension. They didn't walk out together. My mother, Helen, came first, wiping her hands frantically on a dish towel, her face pale. My father, Mark, followed a half step behind, his shoulders hunched. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes darted from the floor to the window, to the ceiling, anywhere but at his daughter standing in the doorway. Mom's hands were twisting the kitchen towel, wringing it so hard her knuckles were white. The air was thick with the residue of an argument that had clearly taken place moments before I arrived. "Aubrey, honey," Mom started, her voice thin. "We didn't know you were coming." That was the point. Mom, it was a surprise. My voice came out colder than I intended. My gaze swept the room again, absorbing the details that my initial shock had missed. It wasn't just the toys. By the doorway of the master bedroom, my parents' bedroom, were two large, scuffed suitcases, Ethan and Brianna's, the door to the smaller guest room, the one I'd set up with a queen bed and neutral, calming art, was wide open. It was now a makeshift nursery. A portable crib was shoved in one corner, a travel mattress was on the floor, and the room was heaped with stuffed animals, diaper boxes, and tiny clothes. They hadn't just visited for the weekend, they had moved in. They had taken my parents' room. Brianna must have followed my gaze. She let out a small, dismissive laugh. "You gave the house to Mom and Dad," she said, stepping further into the room. "Wouldn't they want to give it to the people who need it more? We're a family of 4. They're just 2. The implication was staggering, that my gift, given to them for their peace, was now a commodity to be redistributed based on her definition of need. I forced myself to take a breath. I focused on the key still clutched in my hand. The teeth were biting into my palm, leaving deep, painful indents. Good. It kept me anchored. "Who said this house was yours?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I directed the question to Ethan, but it was Brianna who answered. "Mom and Dad did," she said brightly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I turned my head to my parents. My mother flinched. My father finally looked at me, his expression tortured. "Aubrey," Dad mumbled, his voice gravelly. He cleared his throat. "It's not like that. It's just, Ethan said you kids could use it for a few months. You kids." The pathetic attempt to group me in with this, to make it sound like a shared, sibling arrangement, as if I, the one who had signed the $275,000 check, was on the same level as the brother who hadn't held a steady job in 5 years. "A few months," I repeated. The words tasted like ash. "A few months in your bedroom? While you sleep in the guest room?" My mother's face crumpled. They needed the bigger room, for the crib. It was just easier. Aubrey, just for a little while. They're having a hard time." "We're always having a hard time, Aubrey," Ethan chimed in from the couch, his eyes still on the TV. He finally clicked it off, and the sudden silence was louder than the cartoon. "That's what happens when you have a real family, real responsibilities, not just appointments." My 36 years of being the responsible daughter, of swallowing my anger, of paying their bills, of never asking for anything, all of it snapped. My gaze drifted from his smug face to the dining table, and that's when I saw it. The final, damning piece of evidence. It wasn't just an invasion, it was a business plan. On the table, next to a stack of sippy cups and unopened mail addressed to my parents, was a pile of printer paper. On top, a printout from Airbnb. I could see the title, even from this distance. Lakeside Family Retreat. Owner not on site. Next to it was a yellow legal pad, filled with Brianna's loopy, unmistakable handwriting. It was a calendar, notes about cleaning fees, key code changes, and guest check-ins. 2 weekends in the coming month were already blocked out. They weren't just living here. They weren't just taking my parents' room. They were renting it. They were trying to monetize my gift, my parents' home, right under their noses. And the owner not on site was the deepest cut. They were already erasing my parents from the equation. I felt the blood drain from my face, replaced by a sudden, Arctic calm. The daughter who had driven 2 hours to surprise her parents was gone. The woman who had structured a $500,000 dental practice from scratch and read every line of a complex trust document had just walked in. I walked past them all. I did not look at my mother's pleading face or my father's shame. I walked to the dining table, picked up the Airbnb printout, and read it. Then I turned around. I pulled out one of the dining chairs, one of the chairs I paid for, and I sat down at the head of the table. I looked directly at my brother. "Then today," I said, my voice perfectly level, "we are going to talk like adults about ownership." Ethan actually laughed. It was a short, barking sound, full of genuine amusement. He pushed himself off the sofa and sauntered over, leaning his hands on the back of the chair opposite me. He still looked down on me, even while I was sitting. "The more you talk, the more you prove you just bought this place to show off," he sneered. "You can't stand that someone else is happy here. You can't stand that we're a real family, and you're just the ATM." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, a cruel little smile playing on his lips. "And as for the future of this house, someone else is already taking care of that." When I was 10 years old, we lived in Brookview Heights. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of a 6-story brick building that always smelled like damp carpet, and whatever the family in 2B was boiling, the walls were so thin I could hear the theme song for the 9 o'clock news through my bedroom wall, signaling Mr. Henderson's bedtime. I knew the couple in 3D fought every Tuesday, and I knew the baby downstairs had colic. Ethan and I shared a bedroom, separated by a faded floral curtain that didn't quite reach the wall, leaving a permanent gap of observation. My space was a small twin bed and a particle board desk. His was a chaotic pile of toys and unread comic books. My father, Mark, worked the graveyard shift at a beverage distribution warehouse. The sound of his key turning in the lock at 4 in the morning was my secret alarm clock. I'd lie still, pretending to be asleep, watching him through the crack in my bedroom door. He'd stand in the tiny hallway, illuminated only by the orange street lamp outside, and slowly, painfully, take off his steel-toed boots. He moved with a heavy quietness, trying not to wake us. I'd watch him rub the small of his back. His shoulders slumped with a weariness that seemed embedded in his bones, but if he caught me peeking, his face would crack into a smile so tired it looked painful. He would press a finger to his lips, and I would nod. That image, my father smiling through the exhaustion, burned itself into my memory. It became my definition of love, sacrifice. My mother, Helen, fought her own battles from the kitchen table. She was a seamstress. Our apartment was a constant obstacle course of fabric bolts, dressmaker's dummies, and stray pins embedded in the carpet. The high-pitched whir of her singer machine was the soundtrack to my childhood, a sound that meant she was awake and the bills were being held at bay, just barely. She'd sit there until midnight, her back curved under the small lamp, her glasses slipping down her nose. Her hands were not soft, they were rough, the skin thick and calloused, permanently pin-pricked, the fingers stained with dye. I learned early that money was not an abstract concept. It was the ache in my father's back and the raw, chapped skin on my mother's knuckles. I would sit with her after finishing my homework, cutting threads and folding finished pieces. "Good girl, Aubrey," she'd murmur, not looking up. Stack them neatly. I learned the feel of hard-earned money by the weight of finished shirts. Ethan, however, seemed to live in a different version of that same apartment. He was the baby, the boy. He was protected. When I brought home a B on a math test, my father would look at it and ask, "Why not an A? Aubrey, you're smart." When Ethan failed a test, which he often did, my mother would call the school and blame the teacher for not being engaging enough. I learned to do my homework silently at the kitchen table while she sewed. Ethan learned to do his homework only after complaining loudly enough that Mom would sigh, stop her paying work, and sit with him, essentially doing it for him. Her philosophy was simple, and I heard it 100 times, spoken to her friends, to our relatives, to me. A boy has to build a career. A girl just needs to find stability. I would just sit there, snipping threads, and swallow the words. I learned to swallow everything. I learned that my role was to be stable, to be quiet, to not add to the burden. Ethan's role was to have potential. Mine was to facilitate it. The moment that solidified it for me came when I was 12. I needed a new textbook for an advanced science class I had fought to get into. It cost $30. I had asked my parents, and for a week they had been seeing what they could do. I saw my father sitting at the kitchen table, his wallet open in front of him. It was almost empty. Just a few singles and one $20 bill. I was about to ask him about the book again when Ethan, then 10, bounced into the room. He wanted to go to the movies with his friends. It was $20 for the ticket, popcorn, and a soda. I watched my father's hand hover over the wallet. I saw the conflict in his eyes. He looked at me, standing in the hallway, then at Ethan, who was vibrating with oblivious, childish desire. My father sighed, a long, rattling breath. He pulled the $20 bill from the wallet and handed it to my brother. "Be back by 5, he said, his voice gruff. Ethan snatched the bill and was gone in a blur of sneakers and a slammed door. My father looked at me, his face a mask of apology and shame. "Next week, Aubrey, I promise, I get paid next week." I just nodded. "It's okay, Dad." I didn't get the textbook until 2 weeks later, after borrowing notes from a friend and falling behind. I never blamed my father. I understood. He was trying to give his son a normal childhood, a moment of joy that wasn't defined by what they lacked. But I learned something critical. In our family, Ethan's wants would always be louder than my needs. It wasn't all misery. I loved my family. I loved them fiercely. There were nights we'd eat cheap spaghetti. The 4 of us crowded onto the lumpy, pull-out sofa, watching a movie on a rented VHS tape. We'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. We were poor, but we were a unit. We were in it together. That was the narrative I clung to. The 4 of us against the world. That narrative shattered one night. I was 13. I was in my bed, on my side of the curtain, pretending to be asleep. The TV was off. The sewing machine was quiet. The only sound was my parents whispering in the kitchen. They weren't fighting. They were scared. The warehouse had cut Dad's overtime. Mom's biggest client, the dry cleaner, was late on a payment. They were whispering about rent, about the pink eviction notice they'd received that day. They were $200 short. I heard my father's voice, thick with a kind of despair I had never heard before. "I don't know what to do. Helen, I don't know where else to get it. My credit is shot." My mother started to cry. It was a quiet, stifled sound that was 1,000 times worse than shouting. "We have 1 week, Mark, 1 week." I lay there in the dark, my comforter pulled up to my chin, and my heart felt like it was breaking. The world, which had seemed manageable, suddenly felt terrifyingly unstable. I realized my parents weren't infallible. They were just as scared as I was. And in that moment, I made a vow. I didn't say it out loud. I whispered it into my pillow, a silent, binding contract with myself. One day, I will be the one. I will take care of you. You will never have to feel this way again. From that night on, my life was a straight line. I wasn't a kid anymore. I focused on one thing, getting out, so I could pull them out with me. I studied not just to learn, but to win. I worked, bagging groceries, tutoring kids richer than me. I applied for every scholarship, wrote every essay. I chose my path not out of passion, but out of pragmatism. I wanted stability. I wanted a high-income, recession-proof skill. Dentistry. It was perfect. It was secure. It was a long, brutal road of student loans and sleepless nights. But that image of my parents whispering in the dark never left me. It was my fuel. Ethan took a different lesson from our childhood. He watched me start to take over. When I got my first job in high school, I started helping with the grocery bills. When I was in college, I sent money home. I was saving them. And Ethan grew up watching this, internalizing a completely different, unspoken belief. Someone will always save us. Aubrey is saving Mom and Dad, so someone will save me. He never had to face the consequences. He drifted through school, charmed his way into jobs he couldn't keep, and always had a handout, which my mother, and by extension I, always filled. The first time I thought of the house, the actual house, was during my 3rd year of dental school. I was exhausted, living on instant ramen and fumes from the anatomy lab. I was flipping through a waiting room magazine, trying to stay awake. There was a picture, a small, simple house with a white porch, overlooking a calm, blue lake. It wasn't a mansion, It was just peaceful. It was the absolute opposite of the Brookview Heights apartment. No noisy neighbors, no sirens, no smell of boiling cabbage. It was the physical manifestation of the promise I'd made to myself. It was the place my parents would finally be able to breathe. That picture became my new focus. I graduated. I got my license. I started paying off the mountain of debt. And I started paying for my parents' lives. I grew up with two parallel beliefs held tight inside me. The first was that I was the designated provider, the one responsible for clearing the family's debts, both financial and emotional. The second, and this was my fatal mistake, was the naive, childish assumption that everyone, especially my brother, saw and appreciated the sacrifice. I believed that when the time came, they would all respect what I had built for us. I never realized that to Ethan, my sacrifice wasn't a gift. It was just an expectation. My world is built on a 10-hour-a-day, sometimes 12-hour-a-day, foundation of precision. I am a dentist at a private practice in a gleaming downtown high-rise. My days are a rotating series of anxious faces, the high-pitched whine of the drill, and the smell of latex and clove oil. I spend my life bent at an awkward angle, my neck in a permanent state of protest, coaxing people to open wider. I am the barrier between a patient and their pain, or the artist sculpting their vanity. I deal with executives who are terrified of needles, and aspiring models who demand a shade of white that does not exist in nature. I am paid well for this tension. But that money is not my own, not really. The numbers are staggering when you're the one responsible for them. First, the non-negotiables. The six-figure student loan payments that still arrive every month without fail. The malpractice insurance, which costs more per year than my first car. The city and federal taxes. The overhead for the practice itself. After all that, a significant amount is left over, and on the first of every month, I move it. I pay the rent for my parents' current apartment, a nice 2-bedroom in a quiet suburb, the one I moved them into a decade ago to get them out of Brookview Heights. I pay their electricity, I pay their gas, I pay their premium health insurance plan, the one that actually covers my father's medications without a crippling deductible. I am the one who ensures the refrigerator is full and the lights stay on. I have been this person since I was 22 years old. Ethan, meanwhile, has made a career out of sales. It is a vague, shifting fog of a job title. He has sold timeshares, enterprise software, high-end knives, and for a brief, alarming 6 months, some kind of cryptocurrency opportunity. He changes companies every year, sometimes every 6 months. It is never, ever his fault. The boss was a micromanager. The market was soft. The leads were bad. He is always on the brink of a massive commission, always just 1 quarter away from making it big. He is 33 years old. His wife, Brianna, had a perfectly decent job in customer service for a financial company. She was good at it. Then she had their second child and decided to quit. "It's time for me to enjoy family life the way it's meant to be lived," she announced on social media. Alongside a photo of her new pedicure, she did not mention who would be funding this meant-to-be life. The system became an art form of manipulation, one I watched with a kind of detached horror. Ethan never called me for money. He was too proud, or perhaps just too cowardly, to face me directly. He would call our mother. I knew the script by heart. He was in a bind. The car needed a repair. The electric company sent a pink notice. The kids needed new shoes. He would lay the guilt on thick, and my mother, whose entire identity was wrapped up in nurturing her son, would panic. I used to give my parents a portion of their monthly support in cash. My mother said she liked having emergency money in an envelope in her kitchen drawer. It took me years to realize that Ethan was the emergency. I came over for dinner one Tuesday and walked in as she was in the kitchen, her back to me. Ethan was there, whispering. I watched her open the drawer, take out the white envelope I had filled 3 days prior, and slip a thick fold of cash, hundreds of dollars, into his hand. She turned, saw me, and did not even flinch. "Oh, Aubrey, good," she said, as if I hadn't seen a thing. Ethan was just stopping by. Later that night, I heard her on the phone with her sister. "He just gets into spots of trouble," she said, her voice full of soft defense. And his sister is very well off. She can afford it. She doesn't mind. She doesn't mind. As if the 10-hour days didn't exist. As if I didn't have to navigate the complex personalities of my partners at the practice. As if I didn't come home to an empty apartment and eat takeout over the sink because I was too tired to cook. As if the money was a river I had simply discovered. Not a well I had to dig. Bucket by bucket, every single day. I began to see the quiet bleed. I knew my parents didn't spend much, yet the money I gave them vanished. I soon discovered they were paying Ethan and Brianna's car insurance. Then I found out they had loaned them money for their apartment deposit, a loan I knew would never be repaid. My money was not just supporting my parents, it was funding Ethan's entire family. It was paying for the expensive sneakers on his kids' feet and the video game consoles I saw stacked by his television. I said nothing. I kept swallowing. It was the price of my parents' peace. If I confronted them, they would be stressed. And my one singular vow was to ensure they were never, ever stressed about money again. This was just a component of that. The Ethan tax. The first crack in my facade appeared a year ago. Ethan needed a family car. Brianna's old sedan was unsafe for the children. He needed, he claimed, $5,000 for a down payment on a reliable, used minivan. He called Mom. Mom called me. And the pressure campaign began. It was about the grandchildren. I was tired of the fight. I was in the middle of a stressful week, replacing a botched implant from another dentist. I didn't have the energy. I wrote the check. 2 days later, the photos appeared on Facebook. Ethan and Brianna, standing in front of a brand new, top-of-the-line black SUV. It was not a minivan. It was not used. It was a luxury vehicle. They were holding champagne glasses, toasting. The caption, written by Ethan, read, "Finally reaping the rewards of my grind. Worked myself to the bone for this beauty. But my family deserves the best. Hard work pays off provider." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. I could feel the throb of my pulse in my temples. He had taken my money, my labor, and worn it as a costume of his own success. I wanted to comment. I wanted to post a screenshot of the check transfer. I wanted to burn his entire digital life to the ground. I closed the laptop. I went to the bathroom and was sick. My friends knew. You cannot hide a financial drain that large for long. "He's a parasite." Aubrey, my partner at the practice, Sarah, told me bluntly over a rare lunch. "You're not helping him. You're enabling him." "You don't understand," I said. The same tired defense. "It's for my parents. It keeps them calm. As long as they are happy and secure, it's worth it." I clung to that belief. It was my shield. It was the only thing that made sense of my choices. That shield shattered 3 months ago. I was stopping by my parents' apartment to drop off some paperwork. I let myself in, calling their names. They were in the living room, and they didn't hear me. My mother was on the phone with her sister, my Aunt Clara. I stopped in the hallway, about to announce myself, but my mother's words froze me in place. "Oh, I'm not worried about Aubrey," she said, and her tone was light, almost dismissive. "She'll be fine. She has her work. She's so busy. Clara, she helps with money. She's always been good with money." A pause. My aunt must have asked a question. "But Ethan," Mom continued, and her voice warmed, filled with a deep, proud affection that I had not heard directed at me in years. "Ethan is the one who is truly here for us. He's the one who brings the kids. He's the one who sits and talks with his father. He's the one who is present." I stood there, invisible, 10 feet away. I was still wearing my scrubs. My back was aching from a complicated extraction. My hands smelled like antiseptic. And I understood. In the family story, my role had been finalized. My decade of sacrifice, the long hours, the crushing debt, the constant, grinding work that paid for the very roof over her head and the phone in her hand. None of it was love. It was a utility. I was the gas company. I was the water bill. Ethan, who took and took and took, was given the credit for emotional connection. He had the time to be present because I was paying for his time. I had become the infrastructure of their lives, and he had become the life itself. I was the walking ATM. And you don't thank an ATM, you just expect it to work. I left without them ever knowing I was there. A few weeks later, I was on the phone with my father. He sounded tired, and I heard him cough, a dry, persistent hack that worried me. We were talking about the weather, about one of his old warehouse buddies, when he sighed. "You know, Bree," he said, using my childhood nickname. "I just wish, sometimes, I could sit somewhere quiet, just be near the water. You know? Just for a little while, watch the sun go down." The old promise, the vow I had made in the dark of that tiny apartment, flared up inside me, but this time, it was different. It wasn't just about paying bills. The image from that old magazine, the one I'd seen in dental school, flashed into my mind. The white porch, the calm water, the silence. I would give them a place, not just pay for one, but give them one. A fortress, a permanent, tangible thing that proved my love. A place of peace that no one, not a landlord, not a bill collector, and not my brother, could ever take away from them. I would build the walls myself. My father's cough echoed in my head for days. That quiet, hopeless wish to just be near the water. It wasn't a request. It was a surrender, and it lit a fire under me. The vague dream I'd held since dental school, the one filed away under someday, became my immediate priority. My nights changed. The ritual of zoning out in front of the television with a plate of takeout ended. Instead, I sat at my dining room table, laptop open, scrolling through real estate listings until my eyes burned. Zillow, Redfin, small-town brokerages. My search parameters were strict, a non-negotiable checklist. First, it had to be within a 2-hour drive of the city, close enough that I could get there in an emergency, but far enough away that the air was different, that the city noise was a forgotten memory. Second, it had to be on the water, not water access, which I'd learned was realtor speak for you can walk a mile through the woods to a public boat launch. Not water view, which meant if you lean out the bathroom window, you can see a sliver of blue. It had to be on the water, with a porch where my father could sit and drink his coffee and feel like the world belonged to him. Third, it had to be manageable, 2 bedrooms, maybe 3 if it was small. I wasn't buying a monument to my success. I wasn't looking for a mansion to impress anyone. I was looking for a sanctuary. I clicked through dozens of properties, oversized, tacky new builds with vinyl siding, tiny, crumbling shacks that were obvious teardowns, advertised as potential. Then, one rainy Tuesday night, I found it. The listing was for a property on Silver Willow Lake. The photos were terrible, clearly taken on a cloudy day with a cheap phone. The kitchen was a horror show of avocado green appliances and dark laminate countertops. The living room carpet was a shade of burnt orange shag that I could almost smell through the screen, a relic of the 1970s. But it had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a white wooden porch that ran the entire width of the house. And that porch was maybe 20 feet from the edge of the lake. The listing price was $275,000. It was perfect. I drove out that Saturday. The realtor, a woman named Pat with a brittle blonde helmet of hair, met me there. She spent the first 5 minutes apologizing. "It's a gut job, dear. There's no way around it," she said, waving a hand at the kitchen. "You'd have to tear all this out, but the location is AAA. I nodded, barely listening. I walked straight through the musty living room, slid open the rattling glass door, and stepped out onto the porch. The world went silent. The only sounds were the gentle lap-lap-lap of the lake against a small, private dock and the whisper of wind through the tall pines that bordered the property. I gripped the peeling paint on the railing. I stood there, and I didn't see the burnt orange carpet or the avocado green stove. I saw my father, sitting in a rocking chair at 6 in the morning, holding a steaming mug. watching the mist rise off the water. I saw my mother, wrapped in the soft blue cardigan she's had for 20 years, her feet up on the railing, actually reading a novel instead of just scanning grocery receipts. I saw them breathing air that didn't smell like bus exhaust. I saw them, for the first time, at peace. "I'll take it," I said. Pat blinked. "Don't you want to, I don't know, see the basement?" "I'll take it," I repeated. But I wasn't a fool. That night, I was back at my dining table, but this time with a spreadsheet. My life runs on spreadsheets. They are the only things that don't lie. Row 1, purchase price, $275,000. Row 2, estimated renovation, $40,000. I knew I could get it done for that if I was smart. Row 3, annual property tax, $3,500. Row 4, quarterly HOA dues, $400. Row 5, closing costs, insurance, title. I looked at the final number. Then I looked at my savings, my investment accounts, my practice's monthly cash flow. I could buy it, not mortgage it. I could buy it outright. A single, clean, cash transaction. It would drain my savings to a level that made my stomach clench. But it would be done. It wouldn't be another monthly bill I was responsible for. It would be a fortress. The next morning, I didn't call the realtor. I called my lawyer. I didn't use a simple real estate attorney. I called Arthur Vance, the man who had structured my dental practice and set up my estate plan. Arthur is a man of 60 who wears bow ties and speaks in dry, precise sentences. He is paid to find the traps. "Arthur," I said, pacing my office between patients, "I am buying a property. I intend to give it to my parents for them to live in, but I do not, under any circumstances, want them to own it." Arthur didn't even pause. He understood immediately. "An irrevocable living trust," he said, his voice crisp. "We will call it the Silver Willow Trust. You will be the grantor, the one who creates it, and you will be the sole trustee." "And my parents?" "They will be the lifetime beneficiaries. We will draft it very specifically. They will have the exclusive, legally protected right to live in, use, and enjoy the property for the rest of their natural lives. Undisturbed. It is their home, in every practical sense." "But," I said, "they can't sell it." "They cannot sell it," he confirmed. "They cannot mortgage it. They cannot take out a home equity loan against it. They cannot transfer the deed. As beneficiaries, they hold no title. The trust owns the house, and as the trustee, you control the trust. You, and you alone." There was a beat of silence. Arthur knew my family. He had drafted my will. "And your brother?" he asked. "Ethan's name," I said, my voice flat and cold, "will not appear on a single page of this document, not as a beneficiary, not as a successor trustee, not in any capacity." "Wise," was all he said. I didn't need to explain the rest. I knew my brother. More importantly, I knew my mother's paralyzing inability to say no to him. If I bought that house and put it in my parents' names, I wasn't giving them a gift. I was giving Ethan a new, high-limit credit card. He would see it as an asset. He would conjure some can't-miss business opportunity, some emergency, and he would pressure them. He would get my father to co-sign a loan, get my mother to agree to a small line of credit against the equity. He would bleed them dry, and in 5 years, the bank would own that house. This trust was not just a legal document, it was a firewall. It was a steel-reinforced door I was building around their peace, and I was the only one who held the key. We closed 30 days later. The house belonged to the Silver Willow Trust. Before I said a word to anyone, I did 2 more things. First, I called the county tax assessor and the HOA management company. I prepaid both. I paid the property taxes and the HOA dues for the next 15 years. A single, massive check. There would be no surprise bills in the mail, no risk of a lien, no letters that could make my father's heart skip. Second, I started the renovation. For 6 weeks, I lived a double life. I worked my 10-hour days at the clinic, and then I drove the 2 hours to the lake, managing a crew. I tore out the avocado kitchen and put in clean. white cabinets, and a simple durable countertop. I ripped up the burnt orange shag and had the original hardwood floors underneath sanded and refinished. I painted every single wall a warm, creamy white. I replaced the rattling sliding door. I bought new curtains, a new sofa, new beds, new linens. I didn't buy the sleek, minimalist furniture that filled my own apartment. I bought the things my mother had always lingered over in catalogs, but declared too frivolous: solid wood end tables, a comfortable, overstuffed armchair, quilts with a simple, classic floral pattern. I was recreating the home I knew she would have built for herself, if she'd ever had the money or the chance. The day I brought them was a Saturday in early September. I told them I was taking them for a drive, just to see the fall colors starting to turn. My mother was suspicious. "Where are we going? Aubrey? You're being mysterious." My father was just happy to be out of the apartment. We drove for almost 2 hours. When I turned off the main highway onto the winding gravel road, my mother gripped the door handle. "Aubrey, this is a private road. You're going to get us in trouble." "It's okay, Mom. I know where I'm going." I pulled into the new gravel driveway. I had painted the porch, and it gleamed white in the afternoon sun. I had put 2 large pots of yellow mums by the front door. My mother just stared. She didn't speak. "Aubrey," she finally whispered, her voice tight. "Whose house is this? This is beautiful. Do you know the people who live here?" I killed the engine. The silence of the lake rushed in. I turned in my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs, my hands shaking. "It's yours," I said. "This is your house. Mom, Dad, I bought it for you. It's your retirement home." My father just stared at me, his mouth slightly open. My mother's hand flew to her lips, and she made a small, wounded sound, as if I'd hurt her. "Don't joke, Aubrey. That is not a funny joke." "I'm not joking." I got out of the car and opened her door. She unfolded herself from the car slowly, as if in a dream. She walked to the porch and put one hand on the railing, just as I had done. My father got out and stood next to her. He had to hold on to the post, his knuckles white. He looked from the house, to the lake, and then to me. His eyes were shining. He couldn't speak. My mother turned around. Her face was a mask of disbelief, and then she just broke. She collapsed against me, wrapping her arms around my neck, and she sobbed. It wasn't a quiet, dignified cry. It was a deep, shuddering wail that held 30 years of financial anxiety, 30 years of making do. "You can't," she whispered into my shoulder, clinging to me. "You can't have done this. It's too much." "I did," I whispered back, holding her up, my own eyes burning. "It's done. It's all paid for. It's all safe." My father put his hand on my arm, his grip trembling. He just squeezed, unable to form words. That was the moment, the one I had been working for my entire life. It was the first time my sacrifice wasn't invisible. It wasn't just a number in a bank account. It was wood and glass and stone. It was real, and it was theirs. That night, after they had walked through every room, after my mother had cried over the new pans in the kitchen, and after my father had sat on the porch in the dark for a solid hour, just listening, I did one final thing. In the master bedroom closet, I had installed a small, fireproof safe, bolted to the studs. While they were watching television, I walked in and opened it. I placed a single, waterproof, sealed envelope inside. It contained the fully executed deed of trust. It contained the contact card for Arthur Vance. It contained the receipts from the county and the HOA, showing a zero balance for the next 15 years. I spun the dial and turned the handle. It clicked shut. I had done it. I had built the fortress. I had locked the door. I had made it legally and financially impossible for anyone, to ever take this peace away from them. I went to sleep in the new guest room that night, listening to the quiet murmur of my parents' voices in the living room, and I felt, for the first time in my adult life, completely and utterly safe. For the first 7 days, it was exactly as I had pictured it. My father, who for 30 years had woken up to an alarm clock and the smell of city exhaust, now woke up before the sun. He would make a pot of coffee and sit on the white wooden porch, just as I had imagined. My mother told me, her voice giddy on the phone, that he had already learned the names of the different ducks that came to the dock. I was happy, and I was busy. Back in the city, I was managing a complex case involving a failed implant, coordinating with an oral surgeon, and trying to hire a new hygienist. My parents' peace was a warm, stable hum in the background of my chaotic life. Then, on the 8th day, Ethan called my mother. I was not there for this conversation, but I know how it went. I know it by heart, because my mother, in a tearful, shattered confession weeks later, recited it to me, word for word. It was a scene she had replayed in her own mind 1,000 times, trying to pinpoint the exact moment she lost control. It began with innocence. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. You've been quiet." My mother, who had never had anything to hide in her life, was immediately flustered. She was, at her core, a terrible liar. "Oh, we're away for a little while. Honey, taking a little trip." "A trip?" Ethan's voice, she said, was sharp, not curious, but suspicious. "A trip where? You and Dad? Since when do you take a trip? You sound funny." "It's nothing, Ethan," she insisted, trying to sound casual. "We're just visiting an old friend of your father's, near the water." That was the fatal mistake. The water. What friend? What water? Why are you being so secretive? The pressure mounted, and he knew exactly which buttons to push. He turned her secrecy into a weapon against her. "Mom, are you okay? Are you in trouble? Why can't I bring the kids to see you? Just tell me where you are. I'll drive out. I'm worried about you." He made her feel guilty. He made her feel as though she were the one doing something wrong by having something for herself. Finally, she broke. It was just easier to tell the truth than to maintain the clumsy lie. "It's a gift, Ethan," she said, her voice small. It's a house. Aubrey bought us a house on a lake." The silence on his end, my mother told me, was heavy. It was not a celebratory silence. It was not joy. It was the sound of a calculator. "A house?" he repeated, his voice flat. "She bought you a house. Where?" She gave him the address. Silver Willow Lake. She gave it to him because, in her mind, what harm could it do? He was her son. It was his sister. It was family. Ethan did not hang up and call me to say thank you. He did not call our father to congratulate him. The first thing he did was open his laptop. He did not type the address into Google Maps to see how far a drive it was. He typed it into Zillow. He saw what I had seen, a desirable location, waterfront, 2 hours from the city. But he also saw what I had actively ignored, the comps, the estimates, the soaring property values in the area. He then opened a new tab and typed Silver Willow Lake Vacation Rentals. He saw the Airbnb listings. He saw the Vrbo calendars. He saw the prices for neighboring properties. Houses no bigger than the one I had just bought, advertised for $400 a night on weekdays, $600 on weekends. He saw the words high season and booked solid. I can almost hear the click of his keyboard as he sent the text message to Brianna. I'm sure it was simple. Aubrey bought the parents a lake house. Zillow says it's worth $350 already. And then, the inevitable follow-up. This place could pay off our credit cards in one summer. He did not wait for an invitation. An invitation implies the host has the right to say no. That Friday, while I was performing a grueling 3-hour cosmetic reconstruction on a tech executive, Ethan packed his family into their new model SUV, the one I had made the $5,000 down payment on. He packed his wife, his 2 small children, and their dog, a 90-pound golden retriever that I knew for a fact was not housebroken and chewed furniture. They drove the 2 hours. They did not call to say they were coming. They just appeared. My mother opened the front door, thinking perhaps it was the neighbor, and there they were, suitcases on the gravel path. two toddlers vibrating with energy, the dog straining at its leash. "Surprise!" Ethan shouted, brushing past her into the foyer, his voice booming in the quiet house. "Wow, Mom, this is really something." Brianna followed, herding the children in, her eyes wide, taking in the new floors, the new furniture, the clean walls. "Oh, Helen, this is nice," she cooed. "The kids are going to love it here. Look, babies, a lake." They weren't asking if they could stay. They were announcing that they had arrived. "We just wanted to see it," Ethan said, already walking into the living room, testing the sofa. "We'll just stay for the weekend. We brought our own food, mostly." My parents, who had just experienced 7 perfect days of silence and autonomy, were suddenly, instantly, unpaid innkeepers and babysitters in their own home. And they didn't take the guest room. "We'll need the master bedroom," Brianna announced, not as a request, but as a statement of fact. She was already rolling a suitcase toward it. "It's just so much bigger, and we need the space for the playpen. You and Dad won't mind the smaller room, will you? It's cozier for just the two of you." And just like that, my parents were displaced. They were moved into the guest room of the house I had bought specifically for them, while my brother and his wife took the master suite. That weekend, as my mother later recounted, was a blur of chaos. They cooked, using every new pan and dish I had bought. They emptied the pantry of the groceries I had carefully stocked. They used every clean towel. The dog left muddy paw prints on the newly refinished hardwood floors. The children's sticky fingerprints coated the glass of the new sliding door. My father retreated. He spent most of the weekend outside, on the dock, as far from the noise as he could get. My mother, reverting to the role she had played for 30 years, just served them. She cooked, she cleaned, she watched the children. Brianna was the true artist. She didn't demand. She manipulated. She sat with my mother on the porch, wrapping one of my mother's new cardigans around herself. "It's so quiet out here, Helen," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Don't you get lonely? Just the two of you? It must be so sad. All this space and no family around." My mother, who had craved quiet her entire adult life, suddenly felt guilty for having it. "And the kids," Brianna would sigh, watching her 2-year-old throw rocks at the ducks. "They just thrive here. They can finally breathe. Our apartment in the city is so cramped, it's just not fair to them. You know? They need this. They need space to run around." The emotional hooks were set, sharp and deep. 1. You are lonely. 2. You are selfish for having this all to yourselves. 3. Your grandchildren need this, and you are depriving them. She was brilliantly, cruelly, reframing my gift. It was no longer a sanctuary for my parents' retirement. It was a wasted resource that was being selfishly hoarded. Ethan, meanwhile, was not just relaxing. He was casing the joint. My father mentioned it to me on the phone, his voice tinged with confusion. "Ethan's acting strange," he'd said, walking around with his phone, taking pictures of everything, the stove, the washer, the bedrooms, even the furnace. He wasn't taking family snapshots. He was documenting assets. He was building a listing. He was sending those photos to a friend of his, someone who flips properties and manages rentals, to get an estimate, not for a sale, for revenue potential. And where was I? I was at work. I was deep in the grind. I was handling a scheduling crisis, negotiating with an insurance provider, and trying to find 30 minutes to eat lunch. I was living my life, blissfully, stupidly unaware. The weekend visit ended, but then they came back the next weekend, and the one after that. My mother's voice on the phone began to change. The giddiness was gone. She just sounded tired. "Everything okay, Mom?" I asked, scrolling through patient charts. "Oh, yes, honey. Just, the kids have so much energy, it's wonderful to have them. Just wonderful." She was already lying to me, protecting him, hiding the invasion. He had, in the span of 3 weeks, become the unofficial, self-appointed master of the house. He knew where the spare towels were. His kids' toys were now a permanent fixture in the living room. The first real inkling I got that something was profoundly wrong was not from a phone call. It was from social media. It was a Thursday night. I was home late, my back aching, my contacts burning. I was scrolling through Instagram, my thumb numbly flicking past stories of my friends' dinners and colleagues' vacations. And then I saw Ethan's. The photo was blurry, artfully so. It was a close-up of a glass of red wine. In the background, out of focus, was the unmistakable slatted white railing of the lake house porch and the deep blue of the water at dusk. The caption was what stopped my breath. Finally getting to touch the lake dream. Blessed my sanctuary lake life. My sanctuary. Not visiting my parents in their beautiful new home. Not thanks to my amazing sister. It was a post of possession. He was tagging the location, claiming it as his own experience, his own life. My blood went cold. It was just a stupid, arrogant social media post, but it felt like a flag being planted on conquered territory. It felt like a claim. I felt a deep, profound sense of unease, a prickle of anxiety that had nothing to do with my patience or my practice. It was the old, familiar feeling from childhood. The one I'd get right before Ethan did something that would cost us all. The one I'd feel when I saw him charming my father for his last $20. I looked at the photo again, and for the first time, I wondered if my silence, my lifelong habit of just paying the bill and swallowing the injustice, had been a catastrophic mistake. I wondered if, by building a fortress to protect my parents, I had forgotten to set a boundary for my brother. And I suddenly knew, with a chilling, absolute certainty, that he was already on the wrong side of the wall. Ethan's last words. Someone else is already taking care of that. Are left to hang in the poisoned air. He expects me to lean in, to ask, "What do you mean? Who?" He expects me to be scared, to be confused, to plead for information. I do none of those things. I simply hold his gaze, my face unreadable. Then I reach down to my leather satchel, the one I carry to my practice every day. I lift it and place it on the dining table. The sound of the heavy oiled leather hitting the solid wood is a dull, definitive thud. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the new refrigerator and the sound of my mother's ragged breathing. I pull the zipper. The sound is sharp, metallic, like a blade being drawn. Ethan is still leaning back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. He has the look of a man who has just laid down a royal flush. He believes he has won. Brianna, beside him, is not as convincing. Her feigned calm has fractured. She keeps fiddling with the lipstick-stained mug, her eyes darting between me and my brother. My father is staring at the table. He is studying the grain of the wood as if it's the most fascinating thing he has ever seen. My mother, beside him, is wringing the kitchen towel in her lap, her knuckles white and raw. She's looking at me, her eyes begging, "Don't, Aubrey, please don't." I pull out the first folder. It's thick, blue, and bound with a simple elastic. I slide a document from it. It's the closing packet. I place it in the center of the table and turn it so the cover page faces Ethan. "This," I say, and my voice is not the voice of their daughter. It is the voice I use with insurance adjusters and dental suppliers. It is calm, cold, and final. This is the deed to this house. As you can see, it is not titled to Mark and Helen Snow. My parents' heads snap up. My mother looks terrified, as if I'm about to take it away. Ethan's smirk widens. He thinks this is a flaw in my plan. It is titled, I continue, tapping the document, "To the Silver Willow Trust. This house, this land, and all its assets are owned by a legally binding, irrevocable trust, an entity, not a person." I let the words settle. I know legal documents are confusing, so I'll explain the roles. Mom and Dad. I look at them, and my voice softens for just a second. Are the lifetime beneficiaries. That means they have the exclusive, 100% protected right to live here, to enjoy this property for the rest of their natural lives. It is their home, in every way that matters. No one can ever take it from them. My mother relaxes, just slightly. See, Ethan says, slapping the table. It's their home, and they are letting us stay here. Family. It's simple. I wasn't finished, I say, my eyes snapping back to him. I am the grantor. I created the trust. I am also, and here I tap the next page, the one with my signature. The sole trustee. That means I am the legal administrator of this asset. My fiduciary duty, my legal and financial obligation, is to protect this trust, this house, and its beneficiaries, even from themselves or their children. I slide the signature page over. Here are the beneficiaries. Mark Snow, Helen Snow. Here's the trustee, Aubrey Snow. Your name, Ethan, is not on this document, not once. You are not a beneficiary. You are not a co-trustee. You have no legal standing here at all. You are a guest. And as the trustee, I am the only one who decides who can or cannot be on this property. Brianna's hand, the one that was tucking her hair back, freezes. Ethan tries to laugh it off. It's a hollow, brittle sound. A trust? So what? That's just paper. Aubrey, this is family. You can't be a trustee for your own parents. That's ridiculous. They are letting us be here. It's family property. End of story. It's not the end of the story, I say. I reach into my bag again. I pull out a second, thinner folder. This is the Silver Willow Lake Homeowners Association covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The HOA rules. I'm sure you haven't read them, since you are not an owner. I flip to page 14, which I have already highlighted in yellow. Article 5, Section 3. Short-term rentals, defined as any lease or occupancy agreement for a term of less than 6 months, are strictly prohibited. I then reach for the papers I'd found on the table earlier, the ones Brianna had left out. I add them to the pile. Which brings me to this. Lakeside Family Retreat. Owner not on site. An Airbnb listing, which is a direct, flagrant violation of the bylaws. This time, Brianna speaks. Her voice is high-pitched, defensive. It's not real. It was just a draft. Ethan and I were just curious about the value. It was never public. You can't prove anything. A draft? I ask. I pull out my phone. I had screenshotted it the moment I saw it. A draft that you shared the hidden link with friends? A draft that already has 2 weekends in October blocked out as booked? I angle the phone toward her. I see the realization in her eyes. She's not just caught, she's documented. That's not curiosity. Brianna, that's a business, an illegal one, according to this community. But this, I say, my voice dropping, is the part that I find most interesting. I pull out one last piece of paper. It's a printout of a screenshot. My father flinches. He knows what it is. I'd asked him earlier, in a quiet moment in the kitchen, to show me. He had, his hands shaking. I place it on the table. It's a text message from Ethan to our father, sent 3 days ago. I read it out loud. Dad, just let Mom cry a little. She'll get over it. Tell her we'll handle Aubrey. Once she sees we're settled, she'll cave. She always does. Just stall her. Trust or whatever. Who cares? We're here. She won't kick us out. The room is dead silent. Brianna looks at Ethan, her mouth open in horror. She hadn't seen this part of the plan. My mother lets out a small, choked sob and covers her mouth. My father just sinks into himself, his face gray. The shame rolling off him is palpable. He'd been a co-conspirator in his own wife's emotional manipulation. But this, I say, my voice dropping, is the part that I find most interesting. I pull out one last piece of paper. It's a printout of a screenshot. My father flinches. He knows what it is. I'd asked him earlier, in a quiet moment in the kitchen, to show me. He had, his hands shaking. I place it on the table. It's a text message from Ethan to our father, sent 3 days ago. I read it out loud. Dad, just let Mom cry a little. She'll get over it. Tell her we'll handle Aubrey. Once she sees we're settled, she'll cave. She always does. Just stall her. Trust or whatever. Who cares? We're here. She won't kick us out. The room is dead silent. Brianna looks at Ethan, her mouth open in horror. She hadn't seen this part of the plan. My mother lets out a small, choked sob and covers her mouth. My father just sinks into himself, his face gray. The shame rolling off him is palpable. He'd been a co-conspirator in his own wife's emotional manipulation. Ethan is cornered. The smirk is gone, replaced by a dark, blotchy red flush rising up his neck. He is a child who has been caught, and like a child, he explodes. He shoves his chair back, and it screeches on the hardwood floor. He slams his fist on the table, making the glasses jump. "You," he roars, pointing at me. "You come in here with your folders and your lawyers. You think you're so smart." He turns to our parents. "You see this? This is what she does. She buys you. She buys a house and thinks that makes her a daughter. She's buying your love. She's buying your loyalty." He points at himself, his chest puffed up. "I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who brings your grandchildren. I'm the one who sits with you, who talks to you, who is present every single day. I'm the real family. She's just the paycheck." It's the same argument my mother used on the phone, the one that had broken me. But hearing it from him, in this context, it lands differently. It's not a sad truth. It's a pathetic, self-serving excuse. I wait until his breathing has slowed, his chest heaving. I don't raise my voice. I don't get up. I just look at him, my gaze as steady and cold as a steel instrument. "Present?" I ask, my voice cutting through the quiet. "You're present for what, Ethan? You're present to take their bedroom? You're present to eat their food, use their utilities, and plot behind their backs?" I tap the Airbnb listing. "You're present so you can turn our parents, in their 60s, into unpaid property managers for your illegal rental business? So you can monetize their peace? So you can fleece your own sister and call it family?" I lean forward. "You're not present, Ethan. You're a parasite." The word hangs in the air. He has no response. He is completely, utterly exposed. My mother is weeping openly. My father looks like he's aged 10 years. I pick up my phone. I don't look at any of them. I open my text messages. I pull up the group chat I had already created, sitting in my car in the driveway before I ever walked in. The group includes Arthur Vance, my lawyer. It includes Mrs. Gable, the retired and terrifyingly strict president of the HOA, whose number I got from the community directory, and it includes Mr. Henderson, the neighbor from 2 doors down who I'd met during the renovation and who had already complained to me once about a noisy SUV with a big dog. My fingers fly across the screen. "Arthur, the trust has been violated. Please prepare a formal cease and desist and an eviction notice, just in case. Mrs. Gable. I am at the property now. I have confirmed an active, illegal rental attempt. Please advise on next steps for formal HOA violation. Mr. Henderson. I'm so sorry to bother you. Are you home? I may need you to witness a disturbance." I press send. I put the phone face up on the table. I look at Ethan. His eyes are wide, staring at the phone. He finally understands. This is not a family argument he can win by making our mother cry. This is a legal proceeding. "The conversation is over," I say. "Now, we're going to talk about how quickly you can pack your bags." My words. How quickly you can pack your bags. Drop into the silence like a block of dry ice. The room fills with a cold, stinging fog. Ethan doesn't move. He just stares at me, his face a mottled mask of disbelief and rage. He, who has talked his way out of every consequence in his life, has finally hit a wall he can't charm, bully, or manipulate. He looks at me like he doesn't know me, and for the first time, he's right. Brianna is the first to break. She lets out a sound that is half sob, half gasp, and she flees. She runs into the master bedroom, their bedroom, and slams the door. The sound is a gunshot in the quiet house, making my mother jump. Ethan watches her go. Then, with a final, venomous look at me, he turns. He doesn't run. He stalks. He yanks open the sliding glass door to the porch, steps outside, and slams it shut, rattling the frame. Through the glass, I see him fumbling in his pocket. He pulls out a vape pen, shoves it in his mouth, and exhales a huge, obnoxious cloud of synthetic-smelling smoke, pacing the length of the white railing like a caged animal. He pulls out his phone and starts stabbing at the screen, no doubt calling one of his equally useless friends to complain. And then, silence. The four of us are left in the living room. My father has his face in his hands. My mother is rocking back and forth, her eyes shut tight, her knuckles pressed to her lips, making a low, wounded, keening sound. The adrenaline that had turned my spine to steel begins to drain, leaving behind the familiar, hollow ache of a family fight. The victory feels sour. This wasn't a boardroom. It was my family, and I had just detonated a bomb in the middle of it. I feel my mother's hand on my arm. Her touch is weak, trembling. "Aubrey," she whispers. Her voice is thick with tears, barely audible. "Come to the kitchen, please, just for a minute." My father doesn't look up. I stand, my legs feeling strangely heavy, and follow her. The kitchen, which I had designed to be a place of light and warmth, feels like a cold, sterile operating room. She doesn't turn on the light. She just stands by the new stainless steel sink, her small frame silhouetted against the window overlooking the lake, where my brother is now a cloud of angry vapor. "Honey," she begins, twisting the dish towel. He is in trouble. He really is. That job he had, the software one, they let him go. Last month, he hasn't told anyone." I say nothing. This is not new information. This is just the next verse of the same song. "And Brianna, she's scared," Mom continues, her voice pleading. "They're 3 months behind on their rent. 3 months. They were going to be evicted. That's why they came here. They had nowhere else to go." She turns to face me, and in the dim light, I can see the tracks of her tears glistening on her cheeks. Maybe just for a little while," she whispers, taking a step toward me. "Like he said, just a few months, just until they can get back on their feet. We can make rules. You can write it all down. They can have the small room. We'll stay in our room. It will be fine. It's a big enough house." I look at her, my brilliant, loving, hopelessly weak mother. "Mom," I say, my voice tired. "He wasn't just staying here. He was trying to rent it. He was lying to you." "I know," she cries, and the desperation in her voice is a physical blow. "I know he's wrong. I know I've spoiled him. I've made him like this. It's my fault. I know it's my fault." She reaches out and grabs the front of my shirt, her hands twisting in the fabric. "But he is still my son, Aubrey. He is still your brother. You are all I have. Please, don't cut him off. Don't do this to him. He has children. I'm begging you. I just want my children to get along." There it is. The sentence, the one that has defined my entire existence. I just want my children to get along. It's the sentence she used when I was 9, and Ethan broke my new bicycle, and I was told to let him have my old one because getting along was more important than my property. It's the sentence she used when I was 14, and I had a final exam to study for, and she made me give up my desk and study in the hallway so Ethan could have the room to play a new video game with his friends, because his social life was important and getting along was the priority. It's the sentence she used on my 18th birthday, when my plans for a small dinner with friends were canceled because it was the same weekend as Ethan's soccer tournament, and the family had to stick together and get along, and my milestone was pushed aside for his hobby. For 36 years, getting along has been a one-way street. It has been the family code for Aubrey Yields. It means my needs, my work, my money, my feelings, are the designated sacrifice at the altar of Ethan's wants. And hearing it now, in this house, the one I had built as a fortress against this very thing, it feels like the ultimate betrayal. And yet, looking at her, my mother, This small, broken woman who I've spent my entire life trying to protect. I feel something inside me crack. The cold, hard certainty of the trustee begins to melt under the scalding, familiar heat of the daughter's guilt. She is right. He is my brother. They are his children. My nephews. Am I really going to be the one who makes them homeless? Am I going to throw them out onto the street over an Airbnb listing he never even managed to post? For the first time, I waver. My mind flashes to a compromise, a new document, a temporary occupancy agreement. I could draft it with Arthur. Clear rules. 1 month. They stay in the guest room. They pay for their own food. No guests. No dogs. They contribute to the utility bills. It would be manageable, wouldn't it? A structured, legal way to help, without giving in. My mother is watching my face, sensing the shift. She can feel the ice thinning. Please, Aubrey, she whispers. Just think about it. A sound from the living room makes us both turn. Ethan is standing in the doorway from the porch, the slider left open, letting in the cold evening air. His face is no longer red with rage. It's pale, calculating. He heard her. He saw my face. He can smell the victory. See, Aubrey, he says, and his voice is soft now, conciliatory, oily. Even Mom says so. We're a family. We're all just stressed out. He takes a step into the kitchen, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. You're right, okay? I'm an idiot. The Airbnb thing was stupid. I was just panicking, desperate. I'm sorry. He's never apologized to me in his life. The insincerity of it is so profound it's almost impressive. You're the smart one, he continues, laying it on thick. You're the one with the trust and the lawyers. That's fine. Keep it. Keep your name on everything. We don't care about that. We just need a place to stay. Just for a little while, like Mom said. Brianna appears behind him, as if on cue. Her eyes are red, but the tears look practiced. We'll help, she says, her voice watery. We'll take care of Mom and Dad every day. We can cook for them, drive them to their appointments, do the grocery shopping. We know how busy you are. Aubrey, you can't be here all the time, but we can. We can be the family. It's a pincer movement, a perfectly executed, two-front emotional assault. Ethan offers submission. You win. You're the boss. Just let me in the door. Brianna offers the guilt. You are the absent daughter. We are the present family. You pay the bills. But we will do the living. You need us. I am caught. I am trapped between my mother's tears, my brother's false apology, and my own deep-seated, crippling guilt that I am, in fact, the absent one, that my money is a cold, poor substitute for the time they are offering to give. I look at my mother, who is now looking at Ethan with a desperate, dawning hope. I look at my father, who is still sitting at the table, a silent, defeated man who just wants the noise to stop. If I say no now, I am the monster. I am the cold, heartless ATM. I am the one who tore the family apart, who threw my brother and his children onto the street, all because of, what, pride? Rules? My resolve, which had been a steel rod, feels like it's bending. My phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. I had left it there when my mother pulled me in. I look down. It's not a text. It's an incoming call. The name on the screen is Arthur Vance. I look up at Ethan, at Brianna, at my mother. Excuse me, I say. My voice is a dry croak. I snatch the phone off the counter, walk out of the kitchen, past my father, and into the small guest room. My room, apparently. I shut the door and lock it. I lean back against it, my heart hammering, and answer the call. Arthur. Aubrey. His voice is crisp, professional, a welcome anchor in the emotional storm. I received your text messages. The cease and desist is drafted. The eviction notice will take 24 hours to file with the county court. I also left a voicemail for Mrs. Gable of the HOA, who I'm sure will be delighted to enforce the covenants. They live for this. Arthur, wait. I say, and I'm horrified to hear my own voice waver. It's complicated. There is a pause on the other end. Arthur has known me for 10 years. He has never heard me waver. Complicated, he repeats. He does not sound impressed. Are they threatening you? No, it's my mother. They've been evicted. They have nowhere to go. My brother, he has kids. Arthur. I see. His voice is suddenly very cold. And they are asking to stay, I presume? Just for a little while? Until they get back on their feet? Yes, I whisper. How did you know? Aubrey, he says, and his tone shifts from lawyer to something almost paternal. I have been practicing estate and trust law for 35 years. I have seen this exact play 1,000 times. The names change, the assets change, but the script is always identical. You are the provider, he is the charmer, and your parents are the hostages. I am silent, my eyes tracing the pattern on the new quilt I had bought for this room. Let me ask you a question, he says. Did you, or did you not, create the Silver Willow Trust for one specific reason? To protect my parents, I say. Wrong, he snaps, and I flinch. You created it to protect your parents from their own son. You created it precisely because you knew your mother's love for him was a liability that could, and would, make them homeless. You knew she could not say no. The entire purpose of this legal structure, the reason I cashed your very large check, was to protect your parents from their own weak, emotional, and very predictable decisions. He lets the words land. This is the first test of that structure, Aubrey, and you are failing. They are making the weak, emotional decision right now, and you are about to countersign it. If you let him stay, even for one night, the trust is compromised. You have set the precedent. He will never leave. The fortress you built will be nothing but a piece of paper, because you were too afraid to be the one to guard the gate. He takes a breath. You are the trustee. Your feelings do not matter. Your guilt does not matter. The only thing that matters is your fiduciary duty. You are not their daughter right now. You are their lawyer. You are their protector. The trust was set up for this exact moment. The person who has to be cold here, the person who has to be the bad guy to protect the asset, is not them. It's you. That is the job you hired yourself for. I am standing straight now. The lock on the door feels cool against my back. The fog of guilt in my head clears, replaced by the Arctic cold clarity I'd felt at the dining table. He was right. I was not failing the test. I had just been reminded what the test was. It wasn't about love. It was about protection. Thank you. Arthur, I say. My voice is steady again. Hold off on the eviction notice, but please send the cease and desist. Send it to his email, and CC me. Send it right now. Consider it done, he says, and hangs up. I unlock the door. I walk back into the living room. The three of them are standing there, grouped together in the doorway to the kitchen, a united front of emotional expectation. They are all looking at me, waiting for the capitulation. I walk over to my parents, who are now sitting side by side on the sofa, looking small and scared. I sit down in the armchair opposite them, the same one Ethan had put his feet on. I look at my mother, I look at my father, and I make the decision. I will not sacrifice their long-term safety for my short-term comfort. I will not let my childhood promise be destroyed by my childhood guilt. Mom, Dad, I say, my voice quiet but unshakable. I love you. I love you both more than anything, which is why the answer is no. My no landed in the room with the finality of a gavel. My mother's face, which had been full of desperate hope, crumpled. Brianna's practiced tears vanished, replaced by a look of pure, venomous spite. Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked from me to our mother, as if waiting for her to override me one last time, when she just wept into her hands. He knew his primary weapon, her guilt, was gone. Fine, he spat. He didn't yell. The word was a short, sharp icicle. He turned, grabbed Brianna by the elbow, and said, "We're leaving." The packing was done in a furious, hateful silence. I didn't help. I sat in the armchair. a silent sentinel, as they stormed in and out of the master bedroom, throwing clothes into duffel bags and grabbing children's toys. The chaotic, manic energy of their arrival was now a compressed, bitter retreat. My father, a gray-faced ghost in his own home, wordlessly helped Ethan carry a large suitcase to their SUV. He couldn't look at me. He couldn't look at his son. He just looked at the ground. I stood on the white porch, the one I had bought for peace, and I watched them buckle my nephews, who were crying in confusion, into their car seats. Brianna slammed the passenger door. Ethan threw me one last look, a look that promised this was not over. He got in, revved the engine, and his tires spit gravel on the new landscaping as he peeled out of the driveway. My mother stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. She watched the car disappear, then turned and went inside, closing the door softly behind her. The silence of the lake rushed back in, but it wasn't peaceful. It was just empty. They didn't just retreat, they regrouped. The counteroffensive began less than 24 hours later. I was back in my city apartment, trying to decompress before a long Monday at the clinic, when my phone began to buzz. It started on Facebook. Ethan, who hadn't posted anything meaningful in months, suddenly became a philosopher. He posted a black and white photo of a stormy-looking ocean. The caption was a masterpiece of vague martyrdom. It's a tragic day when you realize some people would rather own a thing than be part of a family. Money can buy a house, but it can't buy a heart. You just have to remember who is really there for you. The comments were immediate and sympathetic, all from his circle of friends and distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade. "What's wrong, man?" "Thinking of you. Family over everything, bro." Brianna, however, was far less subtle. She went straight for the jugular. She posted on her Instagram story. It was a photo she must have taken just before they left. My two young nephews, their faces pressed against the outside of the sliding glass door of the lake house, their hands flat on the glass, looking in. It was a perfectly staged, heartbreaking shot. Her caption, "Praying so hard for my babies. It's impossible to explain to them why they aren't allowed in their grandparents' new house. Just wish some people's hearts weren't so hard. Family first, broken-hearted." It was brilliant, and it was vicious. In the span of an afternoon, I had been recast. I was no longer the daughter who had provided a home. I was the cruel, wealthy sister, the heartless monster who was not allowing her nephews to see their grandparents. Then the family group chat. Snow crew, lit up. It was usually reserved for happy birthday messages and blurry photos of my nephews. Now, it was a courtroom, and I was on trial. My Aunt Clara. "Aubrey, I'm hearing some very upsetting things. You kicked Ethan and the children out of your parents' new house?" My cousin. "That's cold. Aubrey, he told us he lost his job. You're just going to throw them on the street?" Ethan and Brianna, of course, played the victims with Academy Award-winning skill. Ethan. "We don't want to get into it. It's too painful. She's the trustee. She holds all the cards. We're just... nothing. I guess we just wanted to be near Mom and Dad." Brianna. "We even offered to take care of them, since Aubrey is so busy, but she said no. She's trying to keep them all to herself. It's about control." They were twisting every fact, weaponizing my job, my income, and my legal foresight against me. And the best part? It was all in writing. Every accusation, every lie, every manipulated half-truth. I sat at my kitchen counter, reading the messages pour in, and I didn't feel anger. I felt organized. I began to take screenshots. A week later, the legal attack came. It arrived in my inbox with a thud. It was an email, not even a properly formatted letter, from the law offices of Gary D. Noble. A quick search revealed he was a strip mall lawyer who specialized in DUIs and easy divorce. The email was a barely coherent jumble of legal-sounding words. It accused me of breaching fiduciary duty to my parents by sowing discord and barring access to their primary emotional support system, namely, Ethan. It claimed that Ethan, through his consistent and devoted care and his financial contributions to the family unit over the years, had established a clear right of residency. It demanded that I immediately enter into good faith negotiations to share and divide usage of the property equitably to avoid further legal escalation. I laughed out loud. Financial contributions? Right of residency? It was the most absurd thing I had ever read. This wasn't law. This was an angry, poorly written blog post. I forwarded the email to Arthur Vance. Arthur called me 2 minutes later. I could hear the smile in his voice. Aubrey, this is delightful. This is a gift. This man doesn't understand the first thing about trust law. A right of residency based on emotional support? My first-year paralegal could get this thrown out of court before her morning coffee. So what do? I asked. You do nothing, Arthur said, his voice crisp. You do not reply. You do not engage. Let Mr. Noble and his client flail. They are loud, they are stupid, and they are creating a perfect documented record of their own unreasonableness. You just sit back and let them. But I wasn't built to just sit back. I'm a dentist. I'm a surgeon. I'm methodical. If they wanted a war of paper, I would build a fortress of it. I opened a new, password-protected folder on my secure cloud drive. I labeled it Silver Willow Trust, Violation Log. Into this folder went every screenshot from the Snow Crew chat, every Facebook post, every Instagram story. I saved the email from Gary D. Noble. I added the HOA bylaws, with the section on short-term rentals highlighted. I added the text from Ethan about making our mother cry. Then, I turned to the security system. After their very first surprise visit, I had a discreet 4-camera system installed. I told my parents it was for their safety, to watch for trespassers or check on the dock during a storm. This was true, but I had also, as trustee, given myself remote access. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for patterns. I started reviewing the footage from the week before the big confrontation. I skimmed through hours of footage. My father sitting on the porch, my mother watering the mums. And then I found it. Tuesday, 2:15 p.m. My parents were in the city for a doctor's appointment I had scheduled for them. The house should have been empty. But at 2:16 p.m., Ethan's black SUV pulls into the driveway. He gets out of the driver's side, and then 2 other people, a man and a woman I had never seen before, get out of the passenger side. They look like a well-dressed couple in their 40s. Ethan, smiling and expansive, unlocks the front door, using a key my mother must have given him behind my back, and waves them inside. My blood went cold. This wasn't a plan. This wasn't a draft. This was an active showing. I clicked on the audio from the porch camera. It was faint, but the wind was calm. I could hear them clearly. And the view is just incredible, Ethan is saying, his sales voice on full blast. The master bedroom has its own access to the porch. My sister's name is on the paperwork, just for tax reasons. But my parents and I manage the property. We're looking to do a seasonal lease, 6 months maybe, starting in the spring. We'd give you a really good rate if you booked before the summer rush. Lock it in now. My hands were shaking. He wasn't just renting it. He was misrepresenting ownership. He was actively committing fraud, using my parents' home as bait. I downloaded the video file. I timestamped it. I uploaded it to the evidence folder. Then I drafted a new, very short email. I attached the 30-second video clip. I sent it to Arthur Vance, with the subject line, Active Fraud. I sent it to Mrs. Gable, the iron-fisted president of the HOA, with the subject line, Direct Violation of Article 5. And I sent it to Mr. Henderson, the retired county sheriff who lived 2 doors down and was a trusted member of the HOA board. Arthur's reply was 2 words. He's finished. Mrs. Gable's reply was a bit longer. This is unacceptable. The board will be notified. While I was building my case, Ethan was busy building his. Since he was now barred from the lake house, I'd had the locks rekeyed and the garage code changed. He pivoted his strategy. He became the devoted son in the city. He posted a photo of himself at my parents' old, rented apartment, bringing them a bag of groceries, which, I noted with bitter irony, My monthly support check had almost certainly paid for. He posted a video of himself fixing their leaky kitchen faucet, his sleeves rolled up, the caption, "Doesn't matter where my parents are, I'll always be the one to show up when they need real help. Real provider hands-on family." He was painting the perfect picture. I was the cold, distant ATM who bought a show house they couldn't even use, while he was the one doing the real, gritty work of caretaking. The pressure on my parents was immense. Aunt Clara and others were calling them directly, asking why they were allowing me to be so cruel, why they were choosing me over their son. And then, the unthinkable happened. My father, Mark Snow, the man who had swallowed his opinions for 36 years, the man whose silence had enabled this whole mess, finally found his voice. My mother told me about it, her own voice full of a new, shaky pride. Aunt Clara had called. She'd gone on for 10 minutes about how I was controlling them, how I was holding the house hostage, and how they were being terrible parents for allowing this abuse of Ethan. My father, who had been sitting silently, finally took the phone from my mother. "Clara, shut up," he said. My mother gasped. He had never spoken to his sister that way. "You want to talk about abuse? Aubrey is the only one who has paid our rent for 10 years. Aubrey is the one who pays for my medication, every single month. This house? She bought it with cash. Cash she earned while my son, your nephew, was taking money from his mother's purse. He was," my mother said, completely calm. "She is not holding it hostage. She is protecting it. She is protecting us, because I was too weak to do it myself. My son is not allowed to bend this story anymore. We are not having this discussion. Goodbye." He hung up the phone. I didn't engage on social media. I didn't respond in the group chat. I let my father's words and my lawyer's silence do the work. I sent one, and only one, final email. It was addressed directly to Ethan and Brianna. My parents and Arthur were CC'd. "Ethan and Brianna," I wrote, "this is the final communication I will have with you on this matter. 1. All future communication regarding the Silver Willow Trust property will go through my attorney, Arthur Vance. His contact information is attached. 2. You are not permitted on the property, inside or out, without my written, pre-scheduled consent for a day visit. 3. Any further attempts to contact my parents to harass them, or any attempt to list, rent, or monetize the property, will be met with the full force of the HOA's penalties and all available legal remedies. This is not a negotiation." The response didn't come from Ethan or his strip mall lawyer. It came 3 days later, on a Wednesday. It was an official, certified email from the Silver Willow Lake Homeowners Association Board. It was addressed to me, as trustee, to my parents, as residents, and to Mr. Ethan Snow at his city apartment address. Mrs. Gable, I noted, was terrifyingly thorough. The board has received credible, verified video evidence of repeated and severe violations of Article 5, Section 3 of the Community Bylaws. This includes, but is not limited to, attempts to operate an illegal short-term rental business and misrepresentation of ownership to potential lessees. A formal review meeting is required to discuss penalties, which may include fines and restriction of access for non-resident family members. And then, the final line. The meeting is scheduled for this coming Saturday, at 10 a.m., at the Lake House. Attendance by all parties is mandatory. I looked at my calendar. I already had that day blocked off for my trip to the lake. I hit reply all. As trustee, I will be there. The email from the Homeowners Association was not a suggestion. It was a summons. It was cold, formal, and mandated our presence. To Ethan. It must have felt like a trap. To me, it felt like an arena. Mrs. Gable, the board president, had, in her infinite bureaucratic precision, provided the one thing I could not, a neutral, non-negotiable battleground. This would not be a screaming match in a kitchen. This would not be a war of whispers and guilt. This would be a proceeding, governed by rules, with witnesses, and with consequences. My first call was to Arthur. I'll be there, I said, pacing my office. In person, but I don't want you there. There was a pause. Aubrey, that's unwise. Your brother has legal counsel. However incompetent, you should not be in that room unprotected. I won't be unprotected, I said. I'll be overprepared. I need you on a video link. I'll have my laptop at the head of the table. I need you to be the voice of the law, the disembodied authority, in the room. I need to be the one presenting the evidence. I need to look them in the eyes. You're my final weapon, not my first line of defense. Arthur was silent for a moment, and I could practically hear him nodding. I see. A tactical decision. Very well. Send me the meeting link. I will be on standby, muted, until you call for me. My next call was to my father's sister, Aunt Valerie. Aunt Valerie is the opposite of my father, where he is soft and yielding. She is sharp and pragmatic. She is a retired CPA who has watched my mother enable Ethan and my father permit it for 30 years. She never fell for the charming, struggling boy act. She always saw the balance sheet. She had always, quietly, respected my grind. Aunt Valerie, I said, the HOA is holding a formal meeting at the lake house on Saturday at 10. Ethan will be there. I need a character witness. Her voice was dry as toast. A character witness for whom? Ethan hasn't had any character since 1998. Not for him, I said. For the truth, I'm presenting evidence of his fraud. But they will counter with family. They'll say I'm cold, that I'm cruel. I need someone who knows the history. I need someone who knows who really paid the bills. Aubrey, she said, and her voice was firm. I've been waiting for this call for 20 years. I will be there, and I'm bringing my own files. My third stop, on Friday afternoon, was at the house of Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. My neighbors 2 doors down. Mr. Henderson, the retired sheriff, met me on his porch. Mr. Henderson, I began, I have a formal meeting with the HOA tomorrow about my brother. He cut me off. The boy with the vape pen and the loud SUV? That's the one. You mentioned you saw him. With other people. Mr. Henderson smiled. A thin, satisfied smile. Saw him? We watched him. Tuesday, October 28th, 2:15 in the afternoon. My wife and I were having our tea. He pulled up, bold as brass, brought a nice-looking couple with him, unlocked the front door and gave them the whole tour, talked about seasonal rates and locking it in before the summer. We heard him clear as day. Would you be willing, I asked, to state that to the HOA board? Mrs. Gable is my pinochle partner, he said, and I've lived on this lake for 25 years. I live for enforcing the bylaws. We'll be there. That night, I didn't stay at my apartment. I drove to the lake house. I walked in carrying a heavy banker's box. My parents were ghosts, haunting the new furniture. They were terrified. Aubrey, it's just too much, my father mumbled, pacing the living room. Making a scene like this, involving the neighbors, Mrs. Gable. She'll think we're a problem family. We are a problem family, Dad, I said, my voice sharp. I dropped the box on the dining room table with a heavy thud. My mother jumped. She was pale, wringing her hands, her eyes darting toward the door as if expecting Ethan to burst in. She's right, Mark. It's mortifying. I opened the box. No, I said, my voice low and controlled. I was done being gentle. Mortifying is having your son, in his 30s, try to steal your home. Mortifying is having him plot to make you cry so his sister will cave. This, I said, pulling out a stack of paper, is just the receipt. I looked at my father. This isn't making a scene. This is turning on the lights. The only reason he has been able to do this, the only reason, is because he knows you'll hide it. He relies on you being too embarrassed, too weak, or too guilty to stop him. He does his work in the dark. I'm just bringing a spotlight. I turned to my mother. You have a choice. You can sit here and wring your hands and be the victim he's always counted on, or you can sit at that table with me and be the woman whose house this is. But he is not taking this from you. Not again. My father sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands, but my mother, she stopped ringing. She stared at the box. She stared at me. Her whole life, she had chosen her son. I could see the war behind her eyes. Finally, she took a shaky breath. She walked to the table. She put her hand flat on top of the banker's box. "Okay," she said. Her voice was just a whisper, but it didn't tremble. "Okay, I'm done. I'm done being his excuse. This time, I am on your side. I don't care if he cries. I don't care if he yells. I'm on your side." It was the first time in my life I truly believed her. I was up at 6 o'clock the next morning. My parents were still asleep. I made a pot of coffee, drank a cup in the pre-dawn quiet, and then I went to work. I transformed the dining room. I pushed the large table against the far wall, turning it into a presentation space. At the head of the table, I placed my laptop, plugged it in, and opened the video conferencing link. I tested the camera, ensuring it captured the entire room. I tested the microphone. Arthur's disembodied. Digital presence was ready. Then, I began to set the places. This was my operating theater. I laid out 6 identical folders. Each one contained a meticulously organized, tabbed set of documents. Tab 1. A 1-page summary of the Silver Willow Trust, stating the beneficiaries and the sole trustee. Tab 2. A copy of Article 5, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws, with the short-term rental prohibition highlighted in yellow. Tab 3. Full-color printouts of Ethan's Facebook posts and Brianna's Children at the Window Instagram story. Tab 4. The complete, saved text log from the Snow Crew group chat with the most damning lines from Ethan, Brianna, and Aunt Clara highlighted in pink. Tab 5. A copy of the email from the law offices of Gary D. Noble demanding a right of residency. Tab 6. The finale. 3 8x10. High resolution. Glossy color photographs printed from the security camera video. Exhibit A. Ethan's SUV in the driveway. Exhibit B. Ethan unlocking the front door for the unknown couple. Exhibit C. Ethan, smiling, shaking the man's hand on the porch. The timestamp, Tuesday, 2:16 p.m., was perfectly clear in the bottom corner. I placed one folder at each seat, one for me, one for my parents, one for Aunt Valerie, one for Ethan and Brianna, and a master folder, plus an extra, for the HOA board. At 9:45 a.m., the doorbell rang. The HOA board had arrived. It was, as I'd expected, a precise and intimidating trio. First, Mrs. Gable, the president. She was a woman in her late 70s with iron gray hair and a severe bun. She wore a pressed blazer and looked like she could find a code violation in a blade of grass. Second, Mr. Henderson, my neighbor, the retired sheriff. He was in his element, his posture straight, his eyes scanning the room as if it were a crime scene. Third, a younger woman in her late 30s with a laptop and a no-nonsense expression. "Sarah," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Board secretary, I'm the one who read your email. The video was compelling." She was all business. I showed them to their seats. They each opened their folders and began to read. The room was silent as they absorbed the narrative I had laid out. At 9:55 a.m., Ethan's SUV crunched onto the gravel. He didn't come alone. He stepped out, not in the rumpled, chaotic clothes of a victim, but in a blue blazer and slacks. He looked confident. Brianna was with him, wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, looking like a demure, supportive wife, and with them was a third man. He was in his early 30s, with slicked back hair, an ill-fitting suit, and a scuffed leather briefcase. He looked like he'd memorized every legal drama on basic cable. Ethan strode in as if he owned the place. "Aubrey," he said, nodding curtly. "Board members, this is my legal advisor, Todd Keller. He'll be observing on my behalf." Mrs. Gable looked up from the glossy photos of Ethan's fraud, her eyes peering over her reading glasses. "Is Mr. Keller a member of the state bar?" she asked. her voice like cracking ice. The man, Todd, puffed out his chest. I am a legal consultant specializing in property disputes. So, no, Mrs. Gable said flatly. You are not an attorney of record. You are a guest. You will sit against the wall. You will not approach the table. And you will not speak unless spoken to. She pointed to a single kitchen chair I had placed in the far corner. Ethan's smugness faltered. His legal advisor flushed red and scurried to the designated chair. Ethan and Brianna, their united front now broken, took the seats I had set for them. I watched as Ethan's eyes fell on the folder. He opened it. His face went white as he saw the 8x10 photos of himself. At 9:59 a.m., one final car arrived, Aunt Valerie. She walked in, carrying not a purse, but a large, worn-out accordion file. She nodded to me, nodded to the board, and gave Ethan and Brianna a look that could freeze water. Valerie, my father breathed, surprised. Mark, she said, taking her seat. She placed the massive file on the table. I was invited, as a witness to the family's financial history. Ethan rolled his eyes. A pathetic attempt at dismissal. He still thought this was just about this house. Aunt Valerie opened her file. I saw the top tab. It read, Mark and Helen, Support Ledgers, 2010 to present. She had brought the receipts for my entire adult life. The stage was set. Every actor was in place. My parents sat together. My mother's hand on my father's. Aunt Valerie sat to my left, a bulwark of facts. Ethan and Brianna sat opposite, trapped. The HOA sat at the end. The judges, and Arthur, my lawyer, was a silent icon on my laptop screen, waiting. The air in the room was so thick it was hard to breathe. The only sound was the beautiful, mocking call of a loon from the lake, visible and sparkling through the sliding glass door. Mrs. Gable placed her hands flat on the table, silencing the rustle of papers. She looked at Ethan. She looked at me. It is 10 o'clock, she announced, her voice cutting through the silence. This is a formal meeting of the Silver Willow Lake Homeowners Association. We are here today to review credible violations of community bylaws regarding the use of the property at 14 Willow Drive. We will also clarify the rights of residents and non-resident family members. She paused, her gaze sweeping the table. We will remain calm, we will be orderly, and we will speak one at a time. She turned her head, her sharp eyes landing directly on me. Ms. Snow, she said, since you are the trustee of record, you will begin. I sat up a little straighter. Thank you. Mrs. Gable. Then, I turned my head slightly, but I believe my brother was the one who wanted to make a statement. I'd like to cede him the floor. Please, Ethan, tell the board what you told us. This was not the move he expected. He wanted to interrupt me, to object. He didn't expect to be invited. He blinked, but his advisor Todd gave him an encouraging nod, and he seized the moment, standing up. Thank you, he said, trying to sound like a reasonable man. Look, this is a family matter. My sister, Aubrey, she's very literal, very rigid. She sees things in black and white, money, and contracts. I see family. He gestured to my parents. She bought them this house, a wonderful gift, a qua, as we'd say, a gift for the family, for all of us. I just wanted my children to be able to breathe fresh air, to know their grandparents. I lost my job. The market is terrible. We're a young family, just trying to survive. Is it a crime to want to be near your parents when you're struggling? He was painting a beautiful picture. He was the salt of the earth son, the loving father, being persecuted by the cold, corporate sister. Brianna, on cue, produced a single, perfect tear. She didn't stand, but she spoke, her voice thick. He did lose his job. We're 3 months behind on our rent. They're trying to evict us. We don't have anywhere else to go. We were just scared. We just needed help. It was a brilliant performance, The room was heavy with their plight. I could see Mrs. Gable's expression soften, just a fraction. Then Mr. Henderson, the ex-sheriff, spoke, his voice a low rumble. "That's a sad story, son. Real sad. But what does it have to do with the Airbnb listing?" Ethan scoffed, as if the question was absurd. That was nothing. A misunderstanding. We were just curious. We saw what other houses were getting, and we made a joke about it. "A joke," Brianna chimed in, nodding, wiping her fake tear. "An internal family joke. It wasn't real. We never did anything. It was just a dream. She's punishing us for a dream." "Thank you," I said, my voice cutting through the manufactured sympathy. "I'd like to present my side now." I did not stand. I simply turned my laptop to face the room. "I'm glad Ethan brought up dreams," I said, "because I, too, prefer to deal in what is real, and I found that documentation is the best way to do that." I clicked to the first item on my screen. "As you have all read, this house is owned by the Silver Willow Trust. I am the sole trustee. My parents are the sole beneficiaries. My fiduciary duty, by law, is to protect this asset and its beneficiaries, even from their own family if necessary. This is not a family asset. It is a legal and financial asset for the care of Mark and Helen Snow." I clicked again. Now, as for the dream of a rental, the screenshot of the Lakeside Family Retreat listing filled the screen. This is not a joke. This is a fully built-out business listing. Note the description of the new appliances and the number of beds. A lot of detail for a dream. I clicked again. This is the hidden calendar. As you can see, 2 weekends in October were already booked. These are not jokes. These are, by definition, reservations. Ethan started to speak. "That's not—" "I am not finished," I said, my voice dropping. I clicked again. A screenshot of a text message, the one from Ethan to our father. I read it aloud. "Dad, just let Mom cry a little. She'll get over it. Tell her we'll handle Aubrey. Once she sees we're settled, she'll cave. She always does. Just stall her. Trust or whatever. Who cares? We're here. She won't kick us out." The air left the room. Brianna's face went white. She had not known about this. My mother visibly flinched. But this time, she didn't look away. She stared at Ethan, her expression hardening. "This," I said, "is not a son needing help. This is a con man plotting to exploit his mother's emotions to get his sister to cave. This is a pattern of manipulation." "But I understand," I continued. "This is all just text, words on a screen, easy to misunderstand, right?" I clicked one last time. "So I'd like to play a video." I hit the play icon. The screen filled with the high-definition footage from the front porch camera. "This," I narrated, my voice cold, "is Tuesday, October 28th, at 2:16 in the afternoon. My parents were in the city, at a doctor's appointment I had arranged for them. The room watched as Ethan's SUV pulled up. They watched as he got out, followed by the strange couple. They watched as he, using a key he should not have had, unlocked the front door and waved them inside. The microphone picked up the audio clearly. We all listened as Ethan's voice filled the room. And the view is just incredible. The master bedroom has its own access to the porch. My sister's name is on the paperwork, just for tax reasons. But my parents and I manage the property. We're looking to do a seasonal lease. 6 months, maybe?" I hit pause. I turned the laptop back to me. The silence was absolute. Ethan was ashen. His legal advisor, Todd, was staring at his own scuffed shoes as if his life depended on it. Mrs. Gable's face was no longer soft. It was granite. Mr. Henderson looked at Ethan with the bored, profound disappointment of a man who has arrested hundreds just like him. Before Ethan could even attempt to form a lie to cover this, Aunt Valerie cleared her throat. Her voice was sharp and clear. "Mrs. Gable," she said, "if we are discussing the context of this family and what constitutes support, I'd like to add my own evidence to the record. I am a retired CPA, and I have kept a private ledger of this family's finances for my own peace of mind. She opened her accordion file. Ethan and Brianna have painted themselves as victims, needing a helping hand. The truth is, they have been subsidized their entire adult lives by the person they are now attempting to defraud. She slid a piece of paper across the table. This is a summary. In the past 10 years alone, Aubrey has paid, in direct, documented support for her parents, rent, insurance, and medical, an estimated $180,000. She slid another piece of paper. In that same 10-year period, I have documented, through my sister-in-law's own panicked confessions, at least 6 separate emergency bailouts for Ethan, totaling over $30,000, all of which, I must add, came from the support funds Aubrey was providing her parents. He was, in effect, stealing from his sister by way of his mother's guilt. She closed the file. Aubrey is not the ATM. She has been the entire bank, and Ethan has been the one committing fraud. Ethan looked like he had been physically struck. He was breathing heavily, his mouth open, no words coming out. And then my father stood up. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping loudly on the hardwood floor. He was shaking, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "She's right," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He looked at Ethan, and I saw a lifetime of disappointment, most of it directed at himself, flash in his eyes. I have been a coward. I've been a weak man. I've let this happen. I've let you use your mother. I've let you take from your sister. I just wanted peace." He looked at me, and his eyes were swimming with tears, but his voice was hard. "I am so ashamed, Aubrey. I am so sorry I failed you. That I failed us." He turned back to Ethan, and his voice rose, not in a yell, but in a final, definitive judgment. "But that video, that's the end. Claiming you managed this? Using us as your cover? As of this moment, Ethan, you are not to use my name for anything. You are not to use this house. You are not to use your mother. You are not my asset. I am done." My mother stood up then, slowly, and put her hand on my father's arm. She was crying, but not with the weakness I was used to. It was a different kind of cry, a cry of release. She looked at Ethan, her son, her baby, and her voice was so quiet, so full of a terrible, new strength. "Your father is right," she said. I have loved you in the wrong way. I spoiled you. I made you think that boundaries didn't exist for you. I made you think your sister was just a resource, and that is my fault, my sin, and I am so sorry for it." She turned, then, and looked at me. "Aubrey, I am sorry. I am so sorry that I ever made you feel like your love was just a utility. I am sorry I didn't protect you." She faced Ethan again, and her face was set. "This stops today. I am on your sister's side." The family trial was over. Now, the official one. Mrs. Gable let the silence settle. She looked at her notes, then at Ethan. "Mr. Snow," she said, her voice devoid of any sympathy. "The board has heard the testimony and reviewed the, quote, compelling evidence. It is the board's finding that you have knowingly, and with clear premeditation, violated Article 5, Section 3 of the Community Bylaws. You have attempted to run an illegal business. You have misrepresented ownership, and you have disturbed the peace of this community." She gave him a look that could curdle milk. "This is your first and only official warning from the board. It will be recorded in the community records. Any further violation of any kind, any attempt to list this property, any trespass, will result in the maximum allowable fines, and we will pursue a legal restraining order barring you from all Silver Willow Lake property. Is that clear?" Ethan just stared at her, his face a mask of purple rage. Mrs. Gable then turned to me. "Ms. Snow, as trustee, the board is satisfied with your handling of this and your clear commitment to our bylaws. The house is secure in your hands." "Thank you, Mrs. Gable," I said, standing up. "And in light of that, And as the legal administrator of this property, I need to state the new rules for the record. I looked at Ethan and Brianna. You are not permitted, under any circumstances, to stay overnight in this house, ever. Your status as guests is revoked. Any future visits, to see your parents, must be scheduled with me, in writing, via text or email, at least 1 week in advance. You will not show up unannounced. If you do, you will be trespassing, and I will call Mr. Henderson. That was the final snap. The advisor, the blazer, the calm, all of it dissolved. You! Ethan roared, slamming his hands on the table. You did this. This was a setup. You ganged up on me. He pointed at me, his finger shaking. You'd rather have your folders and your rules than your own family. You're choosing money over me. He looked at our parents. And you just let her. After everything I've done. Fine, I'm done. You're not my family. Don't call me. Don't ask about your grandchildren. We are done. He was screaming, spit flying from his mouth. But this time, no one ran to him, no one flinched. We just watched the tantrum he'd been throwing his entire life, and for the first time, it had no power. He grabbed his advisor. He grabbed Brianna's arm. We're leaving. Brianna, her face a mask of pure terror, stumbled after him. She just watched her entire future, her entire safety net, get incinerated, at the door. She looked back one last time, her eyes landing on my mother, a final, desperate appeal. My mother just looked at her, her face full of a new, sad wisdom. When you learn to respect this family, she said, her voice clear and strong, the door is still open, but today, it is closed. They left. The front door slammed. We heard the SUV's engine roar to life, the spitting of gravel on the driveway, and then, silence. The board members, all business, stood up. Well, Mrs. Gable said, collecting her folder. That seems resolved. Have a good day. They saw themselves out. Aunt Valerie gave my arm a tight, proud squeeze, nodded at my parents, and left too. It was just us, the three of us. The house was quiet. The air was clean. My father, his hands shaking, looked at me. Well, he said, his voice hoarse. I think I need a cup of coffee. Later that evening, the sun was setting, turning the lake to glass and fire. The three of us were on the porch. My mother was in a rocker, her feet up on the railing, reading a book. My father was in the other rocker, a steaming mug in his hands. I was just sitting on the steps, breathing. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't a victory. I had lost the illusion of my brother. I had seen the ugliest parts of my family's history dragged into the light. But I looked at my parents. They were not stressed. They were not afraid. They were, for the first time, truly, perfectly at peace. They were safe. I looked out at the water, and I said it, so quietly, I almost wasn't sure I'd said it at all. I didn't buy this house to pick a side. I bought it so you both could finally have something that no one, not even me, could ever take away. My father reached over and squeezed my hand. He'd heard me. My mother, without looking up from her book, leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder. In the distance, from another house across the lake, I heard the sound of children laughing, the noise skipping across the water. The world kept going, but for us, for the first time in our lives, the boundary was clear, it was drawn, it was reinforced, and it was holding. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story be heard by more people.